Are you serious? Are you serious? Well, it's getting very serious. While North Korea is firing 4 missiles right at Japan, landing in the shipping zone waters of Japan. And as, of course, the President of the United States accusing the former president of tapping his phones. And I even actually have some information on that I'll share in a moment. First of all, we got to deal with North Korea. With another issue, and that is that Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is going to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And they're discussing the Iranians that are trying to set up permanent shop in Syria. Matter of fact, according to the Jerusalem Post, the Prime Minister Netanyahu will discuss the Syrian war developments in a meeting with President Vladimir Putin in Russia, in Moscow, Thursday. Israel hopes to reach specific understandings. Now, this is the 4th time that Netanyahu is going to Russia to talk to Putin about Syria and specifically Iran. They want to reach some specific understandings with Russia to prevent Iran from permanently setting up a base of operations in Syria against Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And at the opening of the weekly cabinet meeting, Netanyahu announced that he will be traveling to Moscow on Thursday for a meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. And the discussions will focus on the current efforts to put together new arrangements in Syria. Those efforts have taken place in recent weeks in different cities, in Astana, and in the capital, of course, the capital of Kyrgyzstan, and Geneva. With the framework of these arguments, and also without them, there is an Iranian effort to become firmly established on a permanent basis in Syria, either through the presence of ground forces or naval forces, Netanyahu is telling the cabinet. He also said the Syrians are involved in a gradual attempt to open up a front against the Golan Heights. Folks, we're reading it right out of the pages of the book of Ezekiel, chapter 38 and 39. It's just unbelievable. The Iranians, the Russians, Turkey, Ethiopia, Libya, and others will invade Israel over the Golan Heights. So do you think you want the Iranians setting a base up on the other side of the Golan Heights when you know the scriptures, what they say in Ezekiel 38 and 39? Now, the Prime Minister said that he will express Israel's fierce opposition to this in his discussions with Putin. Quote, I hope that we can reach specific understandings in order to decrease the possible friction between our forces and theirs, as we did successfully until now. Netanyahu has traveled to Moscow back in September of 2015, just as Russia began its military engagement in Syria, and they set up a de-confliction mechanism between those two countries. Israel didn't want to have a confrontation with Russian MiG fighter jets or Russian troops. So they made sure they were on the, look, I don't know what you're doing in Syria, Russia, but let's not get confused with each other, okay? And they wanted to prevent any accidental engagements between Israel and Russian forces in Syria. So the Prime Minister discussed the situation in Syria and how he defines Israel's interest there with U.S. President Donald Trump a couple weeks ago when he was in Washington. And diplomatic sources said he now wants to have a similar conversation with Putin. So, folks, this is very serious. Beware of the Ides of March, folks. Beware of the Ides of March. We are living in a very, very dangerous time. Israel, they're feeling threatened in the Middle East, all around them. North Korea, firing missiles off right at Japan. All right. The Democrats trying to undermine President Trump and destroy his administration, which is undermining really the sovereignty of this nation. No, folks, you don't realize it. We're in dangerous times. The Russians have been aggressive in Europe, and troop movement everywhere between NATO and the Russians. And of course, Eastern Ukraine is still a major problem. I mean, there's a lot going on here. Are you serious? Give your life to Jesus Christ. We're running seriously out of time, and I'm going to read to you what it says in Ezekiel 38 and 39. Just let me read 4 or 5 verses from Ezekiel 38. The word of the Lord came unto me. This is a prophecy. Son of man, set thy face against Gog and the land of Magog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him. And say, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I'm against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back. This is right to Russia. I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws, and I will bring thee forth, and all thy army, horses and horsemen, and all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, and of all them handling swords. Persia, that's Iran, Ethiopia, and Libya with them, all coming together, all of them with shield and helmet. Folks, this is the very territory in where Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and some of these other radical Islamic groups have deep connections, including now ISIS. Gomer, that's in Russia, and all of his bands, and the house of Tagarma, that's Turkey, of the north quarters, and all of his bands, and many people with thee. So there's a coalition of even other nations. So be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, be thou a guard unto them. And here's the next verse. And many days thou shalt be visited in the latter years, that means the last days, thou shalt come into the land that is brought back from the sword, and is gathered out of many people against the mountains of Israel, which have been always waste. That is the Golan Heights. But it is brought forth out of the nations, and they shall dwell safely, all of them. So he tells Israel to prepare your 4 enemies coming against you over there in the mountain area, which is the Golan Heights. Now, if you read on in Ezekiel 39, you'll know the invasion happens. It definitely happens, and they fight in that area. And they'll end up in the valley of Megiddo before it's over, where ultimately great wars will be fought, including the Battle of Armageddon. Okay? So there's a lot of biblical prophecy playing out before our very eyes right now. The players are on the field now, getting ready for the prophecies to take place. We're living in the last days. Give your life to Jesus Christ. It's going to be an intense live broadcast today. It starts at 12 noon Eastern. You do not want to miss it. At my website at www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. That's www.paulbegleyprophecy.com. And then later tonight at 10 p.m., I am finally going to launch our nightly news headlines that will be almost every evening at 10 p.m. on my backup channel, which is coming_apocalypse. That's coming_apocalypse. And it's my backup channel. You will go there and watch live. Only there, exclusively every night at 10 p.m. Eastern, starting tonight. I'll be back with more current world events and how they relate to biblical prophecy. Trust me, give your life to Jesus Christ. We're in the last days.